Jake Morrison had always been a sucker for online auctions, but this one took the cake. Sitting in his cramped studio apartment in downtown Chicago, surrounded by empty pizza boxes and energy drink cans, he stared at his laptop screen in disbelief. Abandoned space station, Sector 7G, starting bid, $1. The listing was buried deep in the government surplus and salvage section of AuctionGalaxy.net, a site that usually sold decommissioned military vehicles and office furniture. The description was sparse. Pre-owned orbital facility. Sold as is. No warranty. Buyer responsible for transportation and any existing complications. Jake rubbed his bloodshot eyes. He'd been coding for 18 hours straight, trying to debug a particularly nasty piece of software for his freelance client. His brain felt like mush, which probably explained why he found himself typing in a bid of $50 at 3:47 a.m. "What the hell?" he muttered, hitting submit. Worst case scenario, I lose $50 and have a great story to tell at parties. Except Jake didn't go to parties. He barely left his apartment. 3 days later, his phone rang. "Mr. Morrison? This is Agent Sarah Chun from the Department of Interstellar Commerce. Congratulations on your successful bid for Orbital Station Kepler 439b. Jake nearly choked on his instant ramen. What? I won. Indeed. The final bid was $1. Apparently, you were the only bidder. Agent Chen's voice carried a mix of amusement and pity. We need to discuss transportation arrangements. Transportation? I thought this was some kind of joke auction. Oh no, Mr. Morrison. This is very real. The station is currently in stable orbit around Jupiter's moon Europa. We can arrange transport via the next supply run to the outer system, departing in 72 hours. Jake's mind reeled. Wait. You're telling me I actually bought a space station? Like an actual space station? In space. That's correct. I should mention that the station has been problematic for previous owners. That's why the starting bid was so low. Most people in the know avoid Kepler 439b. What kind of problems? There was a long pause. Well, Mr. Morrison, that's something you'll have to discover for yourself. The department isn't liable for any pre-existing conditions or inhabitants. Inhabitants? Have a nice day, Mr. Morrison. A transport shuttle will pick you up tomorrow at 0800 hours. Pack light. The line went dead. The shuttle Hermes was a sleek, silver craft that looked like it had been designed by someone who'd watched too many sci-fi movies. Jake stood on the launch pad at the Chicago spaceport, clutching a duffel bag containing his entire worldly possessions. 3 days' worth of clothes, his laptop, a collection of energy bars, and his lucky rabbit's foot. First time in space? Asked the pilot, a grizzled woman with a metal arm and a scar running down her left cheek. Is it that obvious? You look like you're about to throw up, and we haven't even left the ground yet. She grinned. Name's Captain Rita Vasquez. Don't worry, kid. The first time's always rough. The launch was everything Jake had imagined and worse. His stomach felt like it was trying to escape through his throat, his vision blurred, and he was pretty sure he screamed at least twice. But when they finally reached orbit and the crushing acceleration stopped, Jake pressed his face against the small porthole and gasped. Earth hung below them like a blue marble, swirled with white clouds and brown continents. It was the most beautiful thing he'd ever seen. Pretty, isn't it? Captain Vasquez said, floating over to him. Never gets old, though where we're going is even more impressive. The journey to Jupiter took 3 days, during which Jake learned how to eat, sleep, and use the bathroom in zero gravity. Captain Vasquez regaled him with stories of her adventures in the outer system, including a rather harrowing tale involving space pirates, a malfunctioning oxygen recycler, and something called a quantum storm. You sure you want to do this, kid? She asked on the final day as Jupiter grew larger in the viewport. I've heard stories about Kepler 439b. Weird stuff happens there. What kind of weird stuff? The kind that makes grown men run screaming back to Earth. The last owner lasted 3 days before he called for emergency evacuation. Before that, a salvage crew went aboard and, well, let's just say they came back changed. Jake swallowed hard. Changed how? They wouldn't say. Just kept smiling these weird, dreamy smiles and talking about how they'd found paradise. She shook her head. Command had to decommission the whole crew. Memory wipes, new identities, the works. As they approached Europa, Jake could see his space station hanging in orbit like a metallic spider. It was massive, at least 1 kilometer long and half as wide, with multiple habitat rings and what looked like docking bays along its flanks. Solar panels stretched out like wings, and communication arrays bristled from every surface. Damn! Captain Vasquez whistled. For $1 you got quite the bargain. That's a Class A orbital platform. Those things cost billions to build. So why was it abandoned? That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? The Hermes docked with the station's main airlock with a satisfying clunk. Captain Vasquez ran through the atmospheric readings on her instruments. Good news, the station's fully pressurized and the atmosphere is breathable. Life support systems are running at full capacity. Either someone's been maintaining this place, or it's got some seriously advanced automation. You're not coming with me? Jake asked, though he already knew the answer. Sorry, kid. I've got a schedule to keep. But I'll be back in a month to check on you. Try not to go crazy before then. Okay? Jake took a deep breath, shouldered his duffel bag, and stepped through the airlock into his new home. The main corridor was pristine. Clean white walls lined with soft blue lighting, the floors polished to a mirror shine. The air smelled faintly of ozone and something floral he couldn't identify. Gravity was slightly lighter than Earth normal, making each step feel bouncy and strange. Hello, Jake called out, his voice echoing off the walls. Anyone home? Silence. He consulted the station schematic he'd downloaded on his phone. According to the blueprint, the main living quarters were located in Ring Section C, about a 10-minute walk through the central hub. Jake set off down the corridor, his footsteps echoing in the emptiness. The station was enormous. Corridor after corridor stretched out before him, lined with doors marked with symbols he didn't recognize. Some areas were dark, their lights inactive, while others hummed with activity. Through transparent walls, he could see massive machinery working away, atmospheric processors, gravity generators, power cores that pulsed with blue energy. This is insane, Jake muttered to himself. I own a space station. I actually own a space station. He was so busy marveling at his surroundings that he almost missed the sound of voices coming from somewhere ahead. Jake froze, straining to listen. The voices were definitely there. Multiple people talking in what sounded like a pleasant conversation. But Captain Vasquez had said the station was abandoned. Jake crept forward, following the sound down a side corridor that led to what the schematic labeled as Recreation Facility Alpha. The voices grew louder, and now he could make out laughter, musical, tinkling laughter that made his heart race for reasons he couldn't explain. He reached the end of the corridor and found himself standing before a set of double doors marked with those same strange symbols. The voices were coming from inside. Jake pressed his ear to the door and listened. The conversation was in a language he'd never heard before, melodic and flowing, like water over stones. But somehow, impossibly, he found that he could understand it. So boring without any visitors, one voice was saying. I hope the new owner is more interesting than the last one. The last one ran away before we could even introduce ourselves. Another voice replied, sounding pouty. So rude. Perhaps this one will be different. The energy readings suggest he's curious. Curious is good. Curious means he might stay long enough for us to. The conversation stopped abruptly. Jake held his breath, wondering if they'd somehow detected his presence. He's here, the first voice whispered, and Jake could hear the excitement in her tone. He's right outside. Before Jake could react, the doors slid open with a soft hiss. Jake's jaw dropped. The recreation facility was a vast, circular room with a domed ceiling that displayed a perfect view of the stars. Comfortable-looking furniture was arranged in conversation areas, and what looked like a bar dominated one wall. But Jake barely noticed any of that, because standing in the center of the room were 3 of the most beautiful women he'd ever seen. And they definitely weren't human. The first one was tall and willowy, with skin that seemed to shimmer with an inner light. Her hair was a cascade of silver that moved as if underwater, and her eyes were the deep blue of Earth's oceans. She wore a form-fitting outfit that looked like it was made of liquid starlight. The second was shorter, with golden skin and hair like spun copper. Her eyes were amber, and when she smiled, Jake could see that her teeth were perfect and slightly pointed. She moved with a dancer's grace, and her clothing seemed to shift colors as she walked. The third took Jake's breath away entirely. She had deep purple skin marked with intricate silver patterns that looked like constellations. Her hair was pure white and seemed to float around her head in defiance of gravity. Her eyes were violet, and when she looked at Jake, he felt like she could see directly into his soul. "Welcome," the silver-haired one said, and her voice was like music. "I am Lyra. These are my sisters, Zara and Nova." Jake opened his mouth to speak, but only managed a strangled croak. "Oh, you poor thing," Zara said, stepping forward with concern. "You're overwhelmed. It's always difficult for humans the first time they encounter seraphim." "Seraphim?" Jake managed to whisper. "Our species," Nova explained, her voice carrying a subtle accent he couldn't place. "We are the last of our kind, the final crew of the research vessel Stardancer. When our ship was destroyed in a quantum storm, we managed to escape to this station. But that was 50 years ago," Lyra added. "We've been waiting here ever since, hoping someone would come who could help us." Jake's brain was struggling to process this information. "Help you with what?" The three women exchanged glances. "Perhaps we should explain over dinner?" Zara suggested. "You must be hungry after your journey." As if summoned by her words, Jake's stomach growled loudly. He realized he hadn't eaten anything since breakfast on the Hermes. "That sounds great," he said, still staring at them in wonder. Nova clapped her hands together, and the walls of the recreation facility shimmered and changed, transforming into what looked like an elegant restaurant. Tables appeared, complete with white tablecloths and candles that burned with multicolored flames. The bar expanded, revealing bottles filled with liquids that seemed to contain tiny galaxies. "How did you?" Jake started to ask. "The station is equipped with matter reorganization technology," Lyra explained as she guided him to a table. "We can reshape the interior spaces to suit our needs. It's one of the few advantages of being stranded here." Zara waved her hand, and plates of food appeared on the table. Jake had never seen anything like it. Fruits that glowed softly from within, vegetables in impossible colors, and what looked like meat that sparkled with edible silver dust. "Don't worry," Nova said, noticing his hesitation. "It's all perfectly safe for human consumption. We've had plenty of time to study human physiology." The food was incredible. Each bite seemed to explode with flavors Jake had never experienced before. The glowing fruit tasted like sunshine and honey, while the sparkling meat had a rich, smoky flavor that reminded him of the best barbecue he'd ever had. "This is amazing," Jake said between bites, "but I still don't understand. Why are you here? Why hasn't anyone else found you?" The three women grew serious. Lyra spoke first. "Our species, the Seraphim, were explorers and scientists. We traveled the galaxy, studying different forms of life and cataloging the wonders of the universe. The Stardancer was our home, our laboratory, our entire world." "What happened to it?" Jake asked. "We were investigating a quantum anomaly near the Vega system," Zara continued. "Something went wrong. The anomaly collapsed, creating a cascade effect that destroyed our ship and killed most of our crew. We three survived only because we were in the protected research pod," Nova added, her violet eyes sad. "We managed to escape in a shuttle, but it was badly damaged. We barely made it to the station before our life support failed." "The station was already abandoned when we arrived," Lyra said. "We've been using its resources to survive, but we're incomplete without our ship, without our people." Jake set down his fork. "I'm sorry. That's terrible. But what does this have to do with me? I mean, I'm just a programmer from Chicago. I'm not exactly qualified for interstellar rescue missions." The three women smiled at each other in a way that made Jake's heart skip a beat. You don't understand, Zara said softly. You're not just any human. You're the first person to come here who wasn't driven away by fear or greed. The station chooses its owners, Nova explained. It's equipped with advanced AI that can sense the intentions and character of those who board it. Previous owners either wanted to strip it for parts or were terrified by our presence. But you're different, Lyra said, leaning forward. You're curious. You're kind. And most importantly, you have the potential to help us complete our mission. What mission? The reason we came to this system in the first place, Zara said. We were tracking a signal, a transmission from another group of survivors from our home world. They're somewhere in this sector, but their message was fragmented. We need someone with your skills to help us decode it. Jake blinked. My skills? I just write software for small businesses. Your understanding of information systems, combined with our knowledge of Seraphim technology, could be exactly what we need, Nova said. The station's quantum computers are incredibly powerful, but they require a specific type of programming interface, one that matches human neural patterns. You're saying I'm some kind of chosen one? Jake asked skeptically. Not chosen, Lyra said with a smile. Just compatible. As if to prove her point, she reached across the table and took Jake's hand. The moment their skin touched, Jake felt a jolt of electricity run through his entire body. But it wasn't painful, it was like every nerve ending suddenly came alive, like he could feel the station itself responding to his presence. Whoa, he breathed. You feel it too, Zara said with satisfaction. The station recognizes you as its true owner. It's been waiting for someone like you. Jake pulled his hand back, his mind reeling. This is insane. Yesterday I was debugging code for a grocery store's inventory system. Now you're telling me I own a space station and I'm supposed to help rescue alien survivors. We know it's a lot to process, Nova said gently. But consider this, what did you have back on Earth? Really? Jake thought about his cramped apartment, his non-existent social life, his boring clients and their endless bug reports. He thought about sitting alone in his apartment night after night, wondering if this was all there was to life. Not much, he admitted. Here you could have purpose, Lyra said. Adventure, discovery, and... She glanced at her sisters, and they nodded encouragingly. And you wouldn't be alone. The implication in her words made Jake's cheeks burn. Are you saying what I think you're saying? Among our people, it's not uncommon for relationships to be complex, Zara explained, her golden skin flushing slightly. We form bonds based on compatibility, shared purpose, and mutual affection. Traditional human concepts of monogamy don't really apply. You're all interested in me? Jake asked, his voice cracking slightly. You're kind, intelligent, and brave enough to travel across the solar system for an adventure, Nova said. What's not to be interested in? Jake's head was spinning. This was like every fantasy he'd ever had rolled into one impossible situation. Beautiful alien women, a space station, adventure among the stars. It was too good to be true. There has to be a catch, he said finally. Things like this don't happen to people like me. The three women exchanged glances again, and their expressions grew more serious. There is one thing, Lyra said slowly. The process of decoding the signal will require you to interface directly with the station's quantum computer. It's not without risk. What kind of risk? The quantum field could potentially damage your neural pathways, Zara explained. In the worst-case scenario, it could leave you brain-dead. But we've run extensive simulations, Nova added quickly. The probability of serious injury is less than 3%. Only 3%? Jake said sarcastically. Well, that's reassuring. Jake, Lyra said, reaching across the table to take his hand again. We won't lie to you. This is dangerous. But if we succeed, we could not only find our people, but potentially unlock technologies that could benefit all of humanity. The station's databases contain scientific knowledge that could solve Earth's energy crisis, cure diseases, even extend human lifespan. Jake stared down at their joined hands. Lyra's skin was warm and soft, and he could feel that strange energy flowing between them again. "And if I say no? Then we'll respect your decision," Nova said. "We'll help you get back to Earth, and you can sell the station to someone else. But you'll be stuck here forever." "We've been stuck here for 50 years, Zara said with a sad smile. "We can wait a little longer." Jake looked around the room at these three incredible women, beings from another world who had somehow ended up depending on him, a nobody programmer from Chicago. It was terrifying and exhilarating and completely insane. But it was also the most important thing that had ever happened to him. "Okay," he said finally. "I'll do it." The three Seraphim women lit up with joy, their natural luminescence brightening noticeably. "Really?" Lyra asked. "Yeah. I mean, what's the worst that could happen? I die horribly in a quantum computer interface? At least it'll be more interesting than debugging inventory software." Zara laughed, a sound like silver bells. "Your sense of humor is refreshing." "When do we start?" Jake asked. "Tomorrow," Nova said. "Tonight you should rest. The interface process will require all of your mental energy." "I'll show you to your quarters," Lyra said, standing gracefully. "We've prepared a suite in the residential section." As they walked through the station's corridors, Jake marveled again at the technology around him. The walls seemed to pulse with life, and he could swear he felt the station itself welcoming him. "Is it always this responsive?" he asked. "Only to its owner," Zara explained. "The station has been dormant for decades, waiting for someone it could bond with. You've awakened it." They reached a set of doors that slid open to reveal a spacious apartment. The main room had a large viewport that showed Jupiter and Europa in all their glory, and the furniture looked comfortable and inviting. "This is incredible," Jake breathed. "There's a bedroom through there," Nova said, pointing to another door, "and a bathroom with a sonic shower. The food synthesizer can prepare anything you're familiar with from Earth. We'll be in the adjacent suites if you need anything," Lyra added. "Anything at all." The way she said it made Jake's pulse quicken, but he tried to play it cool. "Thanks. I think I'll try to get some sleep." The three women smiled at him with expressions that were fond and hopeful and maybe a little bit mischievous. "Sweet dreams, Jake Morrison," they said in unison, and then they were gone, leaving him alone in his new home among the stars. Jake stood at the viewport for a long time, watching Jupiter's great red spot slowly rotate across the planet's surface. Somewhere out there, other survivors of the Seraphim race were waiting for rescue, and somehow, impossibly, he was the key to finding them. He thought about the life he'd left behind on Earth, the isolation, the boredom, the sense that he was wasting his potential on meaningless work. Then he thought about Lyra's silver hair floating around her shoulders, Zara's golden smile, Nova's star-mapped skin, and the way they'd looked at him like he was someone special. Maybe he was crazy. Maybe this was all an elaborate hallucination brought on by too much caffeine and not enough sleep. Maybe he'd die tomorrow when he tried to interface with the quantum computer. But for the first time in his life, Jake Morrison felt like he was exactly where he was supposed to be. He went to bed with a smile on his face and dreams of silver-haired goddesses dancing in his head, while his space station hummed contentedly around him in the darkness between worlds. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new dangers, and the possibility of changing the fate of two species. But tonight, Jake was home. Jake woke to the gentle hum of the station's life support systems and the most incredible sight he'd ever seen. Through the viewport beside his bed, Europa hung like a jeweled marble against the star-filled void, its icy surface crisscrossed with mysterious dark lines that scientists back on Earth still couldn't fully explain. For a moment, he lay there wondering if it had all been an elaborate dream. Then he heard voices in the corridor outside. Musical, alien voices speaking in that flowing language he somehow understood. Hope he slept well. The neural interface requires complete mental clarity. He seemed nervous last night. Perhaps we should have been more reassuring. Nova, you wanted to demonstrate Seraphim bonding rituals on the first day. I think we showed admirable restraint. Jake's cheeks burned as he realized they were talking about him. He cleared his throat loudly, and the conversation stopped. "Good morning, Jake," came Lyra's voice through the door. "We've prepared breakfast when you're ready." "Give me 5 minutes," Jake called back, trying to sound more confident than he felt. The sonic shower was an experience in itself. Waves of energy that somehow left him feeling cleaner than any water-based shower ever had. The station had even provided him with new clothes. A form-fitting suit made of some kind of smart fabric that adjusted to his body temperature and seemed to repair minor damage automatically. When he emerged from his quarters, he found the 3 seraphim women waiting in the corridor. In the station's morning lighting cycle, they looked even more otherworldly beautiful than the night before. Lyra's silver hair seemed to catch and reflect light that wasn't there, while Zara's golden skin had a warm glow that made Jake want to reach out and touch her. Nova's constellation patterns shifted slowly across her purple skin like a living star map. "You look much better," Zara said with a smile. "More settled." "I feel like I'm still dreaming," Jake admitted as they walked toward the main recreation area. "Yesterday I was eating ramen noodles in a studio apartment. Now I'm having breakfast with 3 gorgeous alien women on a space station I apparently own." "Technically, you do own it," Nova pointed out. "We checked the registration this morning. The deed transfer was completed automatically when you took possession." "So what exactly does one do with a space station?" Jake asked. "Whatever you want," Lyra said. "This is a Class A research facility with manufacturing capabilities, advanced laboratories, and enough processing power to run simulations of entire solar systems. You could establish a research colony, start a mining operation, or even rent out space to other organizations. Or," Zara added with a mischievous glint in her amber eyes, "you could help 3 stranded alien women rescue their people and potentially save 2 civilizations in the process." "When you put it like that, it seems like an easy choice." They reached the recreation area, which had been transformed overnight into a comfortable breakfast nook with a view of Jupiter's swirling clouds. The table was set with more of those impossible foods: fruits that tasted like memories of summer, pastries that seemed to contain actual starlight, and a beverage that Lyra called essence of morning, that made Jake feel more awake and alert than any coffee ever had. "So," Jake said between bites, "tell me more about this quantum interface. What exactly am I going to be doing?" Nova leaned forward, her violet eyes serious. "The station's quantum computer exists in a state of superposition. It processes information across multiple dimensional layers simultaneously. To access the Seraphim databases and decode the distress signal, you'll need to synchronize your neural patterns with the quantum field." "That sounds incredibly dangerous." "It is," Lyra said simply. "But it's also the only way. The security protocols on our databases require a living consciousness to authenticate access. Since we're the only Seraphim aboard, and our neural patterns are already locked out due to the emergency protocols that activated when our ship was destroyed, we need someone else." "Why me specifically? Why not any human?" "Because," Zara said, reaching across the table to take his hand, "you have something most humans don't. A naturally occurring quantum resonance in your neural pathways." Jake blinked. "I have a what now?" "It's extremely rare," Nova explained. "Perhaps 1 in 10 million humans possess it. It's what allowed you to understand our language immediately, and why the station responded to your presence so strongly. We didn't know for certain until you touched the station's interface panels yesterday," Lyra added. "But the readings were unmistakable. You're naturally compatible with our technology." Jake stared down at his hands, trying to process this information. "So I'm some kind of mutant?" "You're evolved," Zara corrected. "Your species is developing capabilities that will be essential for interstellar travel and communication. You're just ahead of the curve." "Great. And all I have to do is risk my brain getting fried by a quantum computer." "We'll be with you every step of the way," Nova assured him. "Our neural patterns can't access the databases, but we can monitor your vital signs and guide you through the process." Jake took a deep breath. "Okay, let's do this before I lose my nerve." The quantum computer core was located in the heart of the station, accessed through a series of progressively more secure airlocks. As they descended deeper into the station's interior, Jake could feel the air itself humming with energy. The walls here were different, Not the clean white of the residential sections, but a deep blue-black material that seemed to absorb light. The core chamber is shielded against quantum interference, Lyra explained as they approached the final airlock. Once we're inside, we'll be isolated from the rest of the universe until the process is complete. That's comforting, Jake muttered. The core chamber was a vast spherical room with a single chair in the center, surrounded by floating geometric shapes that pulsed with inner light. Jake had seen quantum computers before, room-sized machines filled with superconducting wires and exotic cooling systems. This looked more like modern art crossed with ancient mysticism. The interface is psychic as much as electronic, Nova explained, noticing his confused expression. Seraphim technology is based on the principle that consciousness and quantum mechanics are fundamentally linked. So I just think at it? More than that, Zara said. You'll need to open your mind completely. Allow the quantum field to flow through your consciousness. It will feel like drowning in an ocean of pure information. And if I panic? Then we pull you out immediately, Lyra assured him. We won't let anything happen to you. Jake approached the chair, which adjusted itself to his body as he sat down. The floating geometric shapes began to orbit around him, their pulsing growing brighter. Remember, Nova said, we're looking for any trace of the distress signal. It will feel like searching for a whisper in a hurricane, but trust your instincts. What about the risk of brain damage? Try not to think about it, Zara suggested unhelpfully. Jake closed his eyes and took a deep breath. Okay, let's find your people. The moment he opened his mind to the quantum field, reality exploded. Information flooded through Jake's consciousness like a tidal wave. The complete history of the Seraphim race, star charts of galaxies he'd never heard of, scientific principles that made Einstein's theories look like kindergarten mathematics. He felt his sense of self beginning to dissolve in the overwhelming flow of data. Focus, he told himself. Find the signal. He pushed through layers of archived communications, historical records, and scientific databases. The Seraphim had been an ancient race, older than human civilization by millions of years. They had explored the galaxy, cataloged thousands of species, and developed technologies that seemed like magic. Then he found it, a fragment of a transmission, hidden deep in the station's memory banks. It was weak, distorted by quantum interference, but unmistakably a cry for help. Anyone? Receiving? Coordinates? Dying? Please. Jake reached out with his consciousness, trying to amplify the signal, to extract more information. The effort was like trying to grab smoke with his bare hands, but gradually, piece by piece, he began to reconstruct the message. This is Science Vessel Luminous Dawn. Trapped in Quantum Storm, life support failing, coordinates Delta 77, anyone receiving. We are dying. Please help us. The coordinates burned themselves into Jake's memory, along with something else. A sense of desperate hope, of beings clinging to life in the void between stars. But the effort was taking its toll. Jake could feel his neural pathways overheating, his consciousness stretching to the breaking point. The quantum field was vast and alien, and he was just a human mind trying to comprehend the incomprehensible. Pull back, he thought. I've got what we need. But as he tried to withdraw from the interface, something went wrong. The quantum field suddenly surged, flooding his mind with raw, unfiltered data. Jake felt his sense of self shattering like glass. His consciousness scattered across 1,000 different dimensions. He was drowning in an ocean of pure information, his mind fragmenting under the pressure. Through the chaos, he could hear the 3 Seraphim women calling his name, their voices distant and distorted. Then, just as he felt his sanity slipping away completely, he felt their hands on his shoulders. Lyra's cool touch, Zara's warm grip, Nova's electric presence. Their combined neural patterns reached out through the quantum field, creating a lifeline back to reality. Hold on, Lyra's voice whispered in his mind. We're here. Follow our voices home. With their help, Jake managed to pull his consciousness back together, to retreat from the overwhelming vastness of the quantum field. The floating geometric shapes around him dimmed and stopped their orbital dance, and the humming in the air faded to nothing. Jake opened his eyes to find himself slumped in the chair, his body drenched in sweat. The three seraphim women were clustered around him, their faces tight with concern. "Jake," Zara said urgently, "can you hear us? Are you all right?" Jake tried to speak, but his voice came out as a croak. "I'm okay, I think. Did we get it?" "You found them," Nova said, her violet eyes bright with excitement. "The coordinates, the ship's identity. Everything we need to mount a rescue mission." "How long was I under?" 6 hours, Lyra said. "We were beginning to worry." Jake tried to stand and immediately swayed, his legs weak as jelly. Zara caught him before he could fall, her strong arms supporting his weight. "Easy," she murmured. "The neural interface is exhausting. You need rest." "No," Jake said, fighting to stay conscious. "We need to go. Now, they're dying." "Jake, you can barely stand," Nova pointed out. "Then help me." Jake looked at each of them in turn. "I didn't risk my sanity just to let your people die while I take a nap. Where is this ship?" Lyra consulted a holographic display that materialized in the air. "The coordinates you retrieved placed them in the Tau Ceti system, approximately 12 light-years from here. How long to get there?" "In the station's long-range shuttle. About 3 days if we push the quantum drive to its limits. Then we leave in an hour." "Jake," Zara said gently, "you've been through a traumatic experience. You should rest." "There's no time," Jake interrupted. "I saw them, felt their desperation. They've been waiting for rescue for who knows how long. I won't let them wait any longer." The three women exchanged glances, and Jake could see the conflict in their expressions, their desire to help their people warring with their concern for his well-being. "All right," Lyra said finally, "but I'm piloting, and you're going to rest during the journey whether you like it or not." "Deal." As they prepared to leave the quantum chamber, Jake caught sight of his reflection in one of the polished walls. His eyes were different, flecked with silver patterns that hadn't been there before. The quantum interface had changed him, marked him in some fundamental way. "It's normal," Nova said, noticing his stare. "Prolonged exposure to quantum fields can alter neural pathways. You'll probably find your senses are sharper, your reflexes faster." "Am I still human?" "You're still you," Zara assured him. "Just more than you were before." Jake nodded, not entirely convinced but willing to accept it for now. He had bigger concerns than his own transformation. Somewhere in the darkness between stars, the last survivors of an entire ship were waiting for rescue, and somehow, impossibly, he was the key to saving them. An hour later, Jake found himself strapped into the co-pilot seat of the most advanced spacecraft he'd ever seen. The Starhawk was sleek and predatory, its hull rippling with the same strange energy patterns that marked Nova's skin. It was detached from the station's docking bay and accelerating toward the edge of the solar system at a velocity that would have been impossible with conventional propulsion. "Quantum drive engaged," Lyra announced from the pilot's seat. "We'll reach the Tau Ceti system in 72 hours. Jake watched through the viewports as the stars began to shift and blur, reality bending around them as they entered quantum space. It was beautiful and terrifying and completely impossible, and he was right in the middle of it all. "Get some rest," Zara said from behind him. "We'll wake you when we arrive." Jake closed his eyes, but sleep wouldn't come. His mind was still buzzing with fragments of alien knowledge, echoes of the quantum field's vast intelligence. He had touched something infinite and incomprehensible, and it had touched him back. Whatever happened next, Jake Morrison would never be the same. But as he felt the Starhawk carrying them toward their destiny, he realized he didn't want to be the same. For the first time in his life, he was part of something bigger than himself, a mission that could save lives and change the course of history. And he was doing it alongside three incredible women who had somehow seen something special in a lonely programmer from Chicago. The stars streamed past like silver tears, and Jake smiled as he finally drifted off to sleep, his dreams filled with quantum fields and silver-haired goddesses and the infinite possibilities that lay waiting in the darkness between worlds. 72 hours later, Jake woke to alarms blaring throughout the Starhawk. Through the viewport, the Tau Ceti system spread before them. A yellow star surrounded by rocky planets and the twisted wreckage of what had once been a magnificent starship. There, Nova pointed to a section of hull that still showed faint life signs. The luminous Dawn's emergency pod. Lyra expertly piloted their shuttle to the wreckage. Inside the failing pod, they found them. 12 Seraphim survivors, their once radiant skin now dim with exhaustion and despair. Among them was an elderly male with intricate golden patterns covering his deep blue skin. "Commander Altair," Zara breathed, recognizing him immediately. The rescue was swift but tense. The pod's life support had perhaps hours remaining. As they transferred the survivors to the Starhawk, Commander Altair grasped Jake's hand with surprising strength. You're the human who found us," he said in accented English. "The quantum resonance we detected. Impossible." "Nothing's impossible anymore," Jake replied, helping him to a medical bay. During the journey back to the station, Jake learned the full scope of what they'd accomplished. Commander Altair revealed that the survivors weren't just random crew members. They were the keepers of the Seraphim's greatest scientific achievements, including the cure for a plague that had been devastating their home colonies. "You've saved more than 12 lives," Altair explained as they approached Jupiter. "You've saved our entire civilization." Back at the station, the reunion was emotional. Tears of joy flowed as the survivors met Lyra, Zara, and Nova. But Jake noticed something else happening. The station itself was changing, becoming more vibrant and alive with each new Seraphim presence. "The station was designed for our people," Lyra explained later as they stood together in the observation deck. "It's awakening fully for the first time in decades." Jake watched Jupiter's moons dance in their eternal ballet, marveling at how much his life had changed. "So what happens now? Do you all go home?" "Some will," Nova said, joining them. "But others want to stay to continue the research work here. Commander Altair has proposed establishing this as a joint human-seraphim research facility." "And us?" Jake asked, looking at the 3 women who had become so important to him. Zara stepped closer, her amber eyes sparkling. "That depends on you. Do you want to go back to debugging grocery store software in Chicago?" Jake laughed. "I think I'll pass on that." "Good," Lyra said, taking his hand. "Because we have an entire galaxy to explore, and we're going to need someone who can interface with quantum computers. Plus," Nova added with a mischievous smile, "someone has to manage this space station, and I think 3 Seraphim women make excellent assistant managers." As the 3 of them surrounded him, Jake realized that buying that space station for $1 had been the best investment he'd ever made. Not because of the technology or the adventure or even the chance to save lives, though all of that was incredible. It was because he'd found something he'd never had before: a family among the stars. Outside the viewport, the luminous Dawn survivors worked alongside station crew members, their combined knowledge already yielding new discoveries. The future stretched ahead like an uncharted star map, full of possibilities and wonders yet to be discovered. Jake Morrison had bought an abandoned space station and found love, purpose, and a destiny beyond his wildest dreams. And this was just the beginning.